I met Lisa at a party when we were both in our senior year of college. We immediately found a common language, and soon love broke out between us. After graduation, Lisa got a job as an administrator at the same college we attended, and I got a job as a consultant at a large technology company. A year later, we got married. After 7 years of marriage, we were still as happy as we were on our honeymoon. During this time, Lisa became somewhat dependent on me. The problem was that her addiction was interfering with my career. I had to refuse business trips because Lisa could not accept the fact that I would be absent even for one night. Because of this, I missed out on several major projects that could have helped me advance my career. I convinced myself that in time she would get over it, and then I could continue to develop my career. I think I simply loved Lisa too much to decide to have a serious conversation, or at least that's how I explained my inaction to myself. It was at this time that my boss informed me that in 3 weeks I would be taking a course in Costa Mesa, California, which is 4,000 kilometers from our home, and that the course would last 4 weeks. When I told Lisa about the course, she threw a scandal. She said that she could not cope with my absence for such a long period of time. I asked if she could take time off and come with me. She replied, "I can't leave college for a month. We are just in the middle of the admissions campaign. You'll have to tell your boss you can't go." I explained, "I can't refuse. It will cost me my job. Without this course, I will not have the necessary skills to do my job. Skipping this course is not an option." Lisa sat looking at the floor and then finally said, "Well, since you have to go, I think I'll survive somehow." I said, "We have 3 weeks to prepare. I will do everything I can to make this easier for you. You know, this might be good for you. This will help you become more independent." As soon as the words left my lips, I knew I had said something wrong. Lisa quickly looked at me and said, "I don't need to become more independent. I need my husband to be at home, where he belongs." Having said this, she went into the bedroom and closed the door. Over the next 3 weeks leading up to my trip, I noticed that Lisa acted like she didn't care that I was leaving. I saw that it scared her. I tried to calm her down, but without hinting that I guessed her fears. My last day at home was Saturday, and Lisa said she wanted to spend a special evening with me. She put on one of her sexiest dresses, and we went out to dinner. She moved closer, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "When we get home, we will make love. When you leave tomorrow, the only thing you will think about is how well I pleased you last night. I want you to miss me so much that you won't be able to sleep at night. This will be my little revenge." Honestly, in all the years of our marriage, I can only remember a few times when she behaved like this. I knew I was in for an unforgettable night. When we returned home, Lisa immediately took me to the bedroom. In the morning, when I was in a hurry to finish packing for the trip, Lisa kept asking me if I still had a little time left to make love to her again. Finally, when I had everything packed and loaded into the car, Lisa came over to kiss me goodbye. She said, "You know you shouldn't have left me like that." I replied, "You know I don't want this, but I have to." Getting into the car, I shouted, "I will call every evening." She replied, "Call me, I'll be waiting," and I went. When I arrived at the hotel in Costa Mesa, I called Lisa to let her know I had arrived safely and left her a phone number where she could find me. Lisa said she already missed me, but from her voice it seemed like she was keeping calm. As I promised, I called her every evening for a week, and every evening Lisa repeated that she missed me, loved me, and really wished I didn't have to be so far away. On Saturday evening, when I called her again, she suddenly admitted that she was horny. She said, "How I wish you were here so I could please you just as I did before you left. I miss you so much." I couldn't believe she was saying things like that on the phone. Usually, she allowed herself such words only during intimacy and only when she was extremely excited. I thought this might be a good time to try to communicate more openly from a distance and said, "Lisa, what are you wearing now?" Lisa responded, "What do you mean? Why don't you take off your clothes?" "Take off your clothes to talk on the phone? Are you crazy? I was thinking we could try phone sex, I suggested. Phone sex? Are you crazy? I don't want phone sex. I want you here, next to me. Her voice sounded irritated. I realized that my proposal angered her a little and decided not to insist. We talked some more, I told her I loved her, and we said goodbye. Our calls on Sunday and Monday went smoothly, and I no longer tried to suggest open conversations. However, when I called her on Tuesday evening, there was no answer. I tried to call before 9 p.m. my time, midnight her time, but never received an answer. I became anxious and decided to call her at work the next morning during a break from class. I was relieved to hear her voice when she answered the call. I asked her where she was and why she didn't answer my calls. I said I called her before midnight. Lisa replied, "Sorry, the girls from work felt sorry for me that I was alone and decided to take me out for dinner and cocktails. I just lost track of time and got home around midnight. Why didn't you call when you got back?" I asked. "It was already after midnight. I thought it was too late and didn't want to wake you up," Lisa answered. "But there's a 3-hour difference. I was still busy preparing for class," I said. "Sorry, I didn't think about the time difference." I asked her if she enjoyed her time with her friends. She said, "Yes, it was exactly what I needed. I think it was good for me to get out of the house a little and unwind." I agreed and said, "You shouldn't sit at home alone all the time. Spending time with friends is a good way to pass the time." The call ended with the usual exchange of "I love you" and the click of the phone. On Thursday night, Lisa told me that I didn't have to call her on Friday because she was going out to dinner with her friends again, and then they planned to go bar hopping. I asked who would be driving, and Lisa replied that they were going to call a taxi. I wished Lisa a good time and said I would call her on Saturday. On Saturday evening, I was unable to reach her by phone again. All Sunday, I also could not reach her. I finally managed to contact her only late on Sunday evening, around 10 Eastern Time. I asked where she had been all weekend. Lisa replied that she went to see her parents. I asked her why she didn't call me from them and tell me she was going there. I said, "I was worried when I couldn't reach you." Lisa replied, "Sorry, I didn't call. I tried to find the right moment to call, but the time difference confused me. I guess I thought that you would call my parents. I would have done that if I knew you were going to go there. Don't be mad at me. I apologized, and it won't happen again." We both felt tense, and I decided to change the subject. I asked how her parents were and told her how the course was going. We ended the conversation by exchanging words of love and good-night wishes. Over the next few days, our calls became familiar and calm again. Everything was going fine until Thursday came. When I called Lisa around 7:30 p.m., she said she was going out and meeting friends for dinner. While she was talking, I heard a door open and close somewhere near her. The sound was barely audible, but I heard it clearly. I tensed up, listening to her voice, and suddenly I heard a man's voice in the background who said, "Are you ready? Oh, sorry, I didn't notice you were on the phone." I immediately asked, "Who was it?" Lisa replied, "Who was it? What are you talking about?" I heard a man's voice in the background. "Who was it?" Voice? Probably the TV. I completely forgot that I had it on. After that, Lisa hastily ended the conversation, saying that she had to go. When I hung up, I remained sitting, looking out the window. My stomach churned with excitement. I had no reason to think that Lisa could be lying to me, but the voice certainly didn't sound like it came from TV. I heard no other sounds before or after it except her voice. Could it be that there was a man in our apartment? I dialed her number again, but no one answered. I waited until 9 p.m. my time and tried again, no response. That night, I continued to call her number every half hour until 11:30, but Lisa never answered. That night, I had a strange dream. In my dream, I saw Lisa making love to me, but I did not feel any physical pleasure. Suddenly, I realized that I was not a participant, but an observer from the outside. I saw Lisa making love not with me, but with another man. Waking up in a cold sweat, I realized that the time was 5:30 in the morning. I couldn't sleep again that night. On Friday, I called Lisa's office and was told that she had taken a sick leave. I tried to call her at home, but again received no answer. In the evening, I managed to catch her, and I immediately asked, "Where have you been all night? I called you at 2:30 at night, and in the morning I called the office, and they told me that you called and took sick leave." Lisa replied, "I think I had too much to drink yesterday. I got home around 11:30 and passed out. I woke up this morning with a terrible headache and nausea, so I decided to stay home." Her answer sounded plausible, but I wasn't sure I believed her. I decided not to escalate the situation for now and leave all questions until I returned home. I had no evidence that she had done anything wrong, and accusations would have seriously damaged our relationship. That weekend, I was unable to reach her by phone again. On Sunday afternoon, I even tried calling her parents. They said they didn't see her. When I finally got through to Lisa late that night, she said she was visiting her parents again for the weekend. This time I was very worried, but I decided not to tell her anything about my call to her parents. I decided that I would wait until I returned, and then I would find out what was happening. The last week of the course turned out to be pure hell for me. Thoughts about Lisa and her behavior did not leave me. But suddenly it dawned on me. I decided that Lisa was just testing me. Perhaps this was her way of expressing resentment that I left her alone. Suddenly everything seemed logical to me. Lisa would never betray me. I was sure of her love for me. And if she was lying, claiming that she was going to her parents, she understood perfectly well that I could easily find out. This thought lifted a burden from my soul. I was no longer tense, and the burning sensation in my stomach disappeared. I was a little angry with Lisa, but at the same time I understood that it was partly my fault. I should have helped her get rid of her dependence on me much earlier, but I even liked that she was completely dependent on me. I didn't know how I would deal with this when I got home, but I was sure that it would be easier than if the suspicions about her cheating turned out to be true. Saturday morning, when I boarded the plane at John Wayne Airport in Costa Mesa, I was stressed about the upcoming conversation with Lisa about her little game, but also excited that I would finally see her and be able to feel her again. Near, I arrived home around 6 in the evening. When I pulled up to our house, I saw Lisa's new Lexus parked too close to the street, so I had to pull over behind. There was a BMW parked in front of the house that I didn't recognize. While getting things out of the car, I hoped that Lisa did not have guests, since I wanted to spend this time alone with her. When I entered the apartment, I saw Lisa sitting on the sofa next to a man I had never met before. The most disturbing thing was that he was holding her hand. They just looked at me, and I looked at them. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I studied this man in silence. He appeared to be about 35 years old, with dark, expensively cut hair and dark skin, possibly of Italian or Greek origin. It was difficult to estimate his height, but I would guess that he is about 1 meter 80. His clothes were stylish, almost too stylish, if I may say so. Shoes, expensive Italian loafers. This man was either really rich or wanted to be thought of as such. We looked at each other silently for almost a minute until I broke the silence. "What's going on here? Lisa, who is this person, and why is he holding your hand?" I felt the tension rising, but I couldn't tell if it was anger or fear, most likely both. Lisa said, "David, maybe you should sit down so we can talk." I replied, "I think I'd better stand." Lisa looked at the man who was holding her hand and then back at me and said, "Okay, then stop. I think it's best to be honest and get straight to the point. This is Bob. I met him a couple of weeks ago and we fell in love. I'm going to leave you and live with Bob." At that moment, I really wanted to hit someone, but I couldn't decide who would be a better target, Lisa or Bob. "What nonsense are you talking about? I'm leaving for a month for work, and you fall in love with some crook," I said, pointing at Bob. Bob tried to get up, but Lisa held his hand. "While you were away, I realized that there was a whole world that you hid from me. Your absence gave me the freedom to explore, and I met Bob, or rather we found each other. I'm sorry, I didn't want this to happen, but you should have understood that I couldn't remain completely dependent on you forever. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She made it seem like it was my fault. I didn't know how to react to this, and I didn't feel comfortable discussing it in front of Mr. $100 Haircut. Finally, I said, Rob or Bob or whatever your name is, would you mind coming out so I can talk to my wife alone? Bob replied, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm here to protect her. I said, I think she needs protection more from you than from me. I don't know why I said that, but judging by his face, my words hurt him. Lisa said, I don't want Bob to leave. We have nothing more to talk about. I just didn't want to leave without explaining everything in person. I felt like I owed you at least this. I replied, You owe me much more than just an explanation. Well, since you're leaving, then pack your things and get out. Lisa said, I've already packed everything. She stood up and Bob followed suit. Now that Bob stood up, I realized that I was taller and physically stronger than him, so I decided to intimidate him a little. I'll give you 2 minutes to leave. Next time I see you, I won't hold back. I'll get some satisfaction. Lisa came up to me, touched my cheek and said, I'm sorry. Then she turned around and headed towards the door. As both cars, Bob's BMW and the new Lexus I'd bought Lisa just a month ago, were out of sight, I realized that I hadn't moved from where I'd frozen right after I'd entered. I didn't even take the bag off my shoulder. I lowered my bag to the floor and sank heavily into a chair, looking blankly at the place where Lisa had been sitting just a few minutes ago. I didn't understand what had just happened. I felt nauseous, and I leaned forward, covering my face with my hands, and began to cry quietly. When the tears stopped, I started drinking. First, I finished all 6 bottles of beer from the refrigerator, and then began to drink the vodka that I kept in the freezer. I drank until I fell asleep or passed out, I don't know, and to be honest, I didn't care. Sunday morning, I woke up on the couch, hugging an empty bottle of vodka. I had a terrible headache, and my stomach was churning. After a shower and a change of clothes, I felt a little better, but I couldn't shake the empty feeling. I kept thinking about Lisa and our last night together. It seemed impossible to me that she could stop loving me so suddenly. As I reminisced about Lisa and that night, I couldn't help but imagine her making love to Bob the same way she was making love to me. This thought caused me incredible pain. I realized I didn't want to think about it, so I decided to get drunk again. The problem was that all the booze in the apartment was already gone, and I had to go to the store to buy beer. It was Sunday, and it was impossible to buy vodka that day. At the store, I grabbed 2 cases of beer and some food, and then headed to the checkout. I was going to pay with a bank card, but when I swiped it through the terminal, a message appeared on the screen: insufficient funds. This alarmed me because I knew for sure that I should have had at least $5,000 in my account. I paid with my credit card and headed to the nearest ATM to check my balance. When I checked my account, I found that both my checking and savings accounts only had $5 left. 2 weeks ago, we had $5,000 in our checking account and over $20,000 in our savings account. Did Lisa really drain both of our accounts? I was overcome with anger. Returning to the apartment, I immediately called Lisa's parents to see if they knew how to contact her. They were stunned to learn that Lisa had left me. All they could say was, "Something is wrong here. Lisa loves you. We can't believe she would leave you and take all your savings. This doesn't look like her at all. We'll try to talk to her when we get in touch." Then it occurred to me that perhaps Lisa did not collect the money on her own. She had never dealt with finances and didn't even know how much we had in our accounts. She used her checkbook only for grocery store purchases. Most likely, it was Bob who convinced her to cash out the bills. I realized that I urgently needed to contact a good lawyer on Monday morning to get my money back before that bastard Bob had a chance to spend it. I returned to the apartment, still seething with anger over the missing money, opened a bottle of beer, and began to walk from corner to corner, throwing out my anger and swearing out loud. As I walked through the bedroom, my attention was drawn to a small leather duffel bag sitting next to my dresser. I had never seen it before, and it definitely didn't belong to me or Lisa. I picked up my bag, put it on the bed, and opened it. As it turned out, it was Bob's bag. Inside, I found clean underwear, a t-shirt, a pair of shorts, and sports sneakers. At the very bottom of the bag was a video camera. I took the camera and carried it into the living room. Since the tape was 8 I had to connect the camera to the inputs on the back of my VCR to view the recording. I opened another bottle of beer, turned on the TV and VCR, pressed play on the camera, and sat down to see what was recorded. When the recording began, the screen was completely white except for the date and time in the corner. Thursday, April 10th, 1992, 6:37 p.m. I looked at the screen and saw some movement, although the picture was still white. Suddenly, other colors began to appear, and I realized that the camera was pointed at the white shirt of someone who was setting it up. Now I saw that the camera was pointed at what looked like a living room, although it was not my home. The camera was focused on the sofa. A few seconds later, a man entered the frame and sat down on the sofa. It was the same Bob. He picked up the remote control and began adjusting the camera, turning the focus ring. The image faded in and out of focus until it finally became crystal clear, and I heard Bob say, "Perfect." He then apparently pressed a button on the remote and the image disappeared. But immediately after that, the picture appeared again, and someone was standing in front of the camera again. The date remained the same, only now the time was 23:22. I heard a voice that said, "Now I'll put on a couple of discs and I'll be back." When the person in the frame stepped back, I saw Lisa sitting on the sofa with a glass of wine in her hands. A moment later, the music started playing. I recognized the songs from the Eagles' Greatest Hits compilation. I had exactly the same disc. For a second, I even wondered if I still had it. Lisa looked up at Bob as he came and sat down next to her. She was wearing a black skirt and a white cotton sweater with short sleeves. Bob, as usual, was dressed in expensive and stylish clothes. When he sat down, he began to talk to Lisa. He said, "I'm so glad you decided to spend this evening with me. When I met you on Tuesday, it was a real blow to my heart. I felt almost physical pain when I found out that you were married. I didn't even think that you would pay attention to me, but you are here next to me." Then I realized that Thursday, April 10th, was the same evening when I called Lisa and heard a man's voice in the background. And this was also the same week when I couldn't find her. Lisa replied, "I myself don't fully understand why I'm here. I know I shouldn't have agreed. David would kill me if he knew I was seeing another man." Bob interrupted her. "Stop thinking about David and think about yourself. You are here because deep down you know that this is where you need to be." Lisa tried to object. "I'm not sure if this is right." But Bob interrupted her again. "Lisa, you are an amazing woman, and I know how to appreciate people like you." He leaned down and kissed her softly on the lips. Lisa didn't pull away, but said, "I don't think we should do this." Bob kissed her again and whispered, "I can't control myself. I feel like if I don't kiss you, I'll explode." He kissed her again, and this time Lisa kissed her back. Lisa made no attempt to stop him. I couldn't believe I was watching Lisa give in to temptation. I wondered if she knew this was all being recorded on camera. They had sex. Now I felt truly crazy. First of all, the damn asshole was so confident in himself that he could sleep with her that he set up his video camera to record it. Secondly, Lisa put up so little resistance and really put on a show. I went to get a beer and continued to drink more until I fell asleep on the couch. Of course, I watched the video a couple more times while I was drinking. On Monday morning, I called into work and took the day off, and then called a lawyer my parents knew and explained the situation and asked if he could help or recommend anyone who could. He referred me to John Mayers, one of the partners in his firm, saying that Mr. Mayers was excellent at cases like mine. I was lucky that Mr. Mayers had some time off due to a canceled appointment, and I was able to see him at 10 o'clock. Mr. Mayers sat and listened intently as I told him all the details, including the discovery of the videotape. When I finished, he asked a few more questions. Lexus, who is the car registered to? To Lisa, I answered. What about a car loan? Whose name is it in? The loan is for Lisa, but I pay for it. You said you've never met Bob before? Right. Mr. Myers leaned back in his chair and turned to the window. He sat there for a couple of minutes, then turned around, pressed a button on the phone, and the secretary answered, Yes, Mr. Myers. Miss Randall, please begin preparing the papers to file a divorce suit in the name of Mrs. Lisa Jackson. I will provide you with all the necessary information as soon as Mr. Jackson and I are finished. When he said the word divorce, I was overcome with fear. Despite everything that had happened, I had not thought about divorce until that moment. Mr. Myers continued the conversation, drawing my attention to the current issue. He said, First, we need to serve your wife with divorce papers. We can then obtain a court order preventing her from spending the money she took from your accounts until an agreement is reached. Divorce? I haven't thought about this possibility yet. Without filing for divorce, there is no way to get your money back. At best, we'll probably only be able to get half back. Under the terms of the divorce, she will most likely be awarded the other half. What about Lexus? The car is only a few months old. Will she keep it? Yes and no. What do you mean yes and no? Well, the car is registered in her name, and you have your own car. This means she will keep the car, but since she was the one who signed the loan documents, she will also be responsible for the payments. So, most likely, she will not be able to afford to keep the car and will be forced to sell it or have the car repossessed for non-payment. Won't her boyfriend help her pay off her loan so she can keep the car? From my experience in these types of cases, a guy will only stay with your wife until he takes all her money and then leaves her. What? I exclaimed. This guy was attracted to your wife when she parked her Lexus outside a popular bar. He noticed her, approached her, and started talking. I quickly realized that she was not very knowledgeable about such things and was easily turned around. These people know what and how to say things to make women lose their minds. Then, when your wife is already attached to him, he convinces her to leave you. She convinces her that when you find out about everything, you will take all her savings and she will have nothing left. This is how she drains the joint accounts. The next step is to convince his wife to transfer money to his account. He promises that she will not need her money because he has enough of it and will take care of her. It sounds corny, but it works. Are you saying that I lost my wife to a cheater? About like this. When she realizes what happened, she may want to get back to you and ask for your forgiveness. But what you do then depends only on you. I can't believe this bastard would do all this for just $25,000. I'm sure he thought there was more money, but now something else is important. If he thinks that your wife will get more money in a divorce, he will stay around until then to take it too. Our task now is to convince him that there will be more money so that he stays with her. We need to keep him here for our final move. What do you mean final move? Did you know you can file a lawsuit for breaking up a marriage in North Carolina? What does it mean? If you have a strong marriage and a third party intervenes to destroy it, as Bob did, then that person can be held liable for breaking the marriage, and that is what we will do with Bob. We'll get him the costs of the trial, my fee, your $25,000, and a fine, the amount of which will depend on whether he wants to settle the case before trial or not. So we need him to stick around while we gather information on him to find out if he's done this before. If we can prove that he's done this before, we can expect a hefty settlement. How are you going to investigate this if I don't even know his name or where he lives? Don't worry, I'll take care of it. It is important that you do not talk to your wife, Bob, or the lawyers who may represent them. Please send everything related to divorce to me. Your wife's lawyers will try to obtain financial information. We want them to think you have hidden savings without telling any lies. This will keep our buddy Bob around. Do you understand? Not really, but I'll figure it out and keep quiet for now. Mr. Myers said, Okay, if there are no questions, we'll take care of the paperwork, and tomorrow you'll sign them. This is how our meeting ended. I left Mr. Meyer's office feeling no better, but knowing that I would receive at least some retribution for the pain he had caused me. Lisa will lose the car because she cannot pay for it, and Bob not only will not receive $25,000, but may lose more. The problem was that I still missed Lisa and would probably take her back. At first, everything moved slowly. Lisa was served with divorce papers about a week after meeting Mr. Mayers. I thought she would call me, but she didn't. A few more weeks passed, and I received a call from Lisa's lawyer. He said he wanted to ask a few simple questions, but I directed him to Mr. Mayers. Another month passed before Mr. Mayers called me with the news. He said, "I have two important pieces of news for you. First, yesterday we served papers on one Robert Devers, naming him as the primary defendant in the marriage breakdown case. Secondly, we were able to find two women who were willing to confirm that Mr. Devers ruined their marriages by promising to marry them and then running off with their money. Simply put, our Mr. Devers is in dire straits." 2 days later, Lisa called me. Hearing her voice, I thought she might want to ask permission to return home. Instead, sounding angry, she asked, "How can you be so petty? Are you trying to ruin my life? This lawsuit against Bob is simply an act of revenge. Stop acting like a child and call it a day. Why do you want to hurt me?" I replied, "Why do I want to hurt you? It's funny to hear from you. I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this to punish that scoundrel Devers. I think very soon you will understand who is really to blame here." I heard Lisa start to sob, and then she whispered, "You're a bastard," and hung up. Another month passed, and I sat in a conference room with Mr. Mayers and the lawyer representing Bob Devers. Devers himself didn't bother to come. Ultimately, following the advice of his lawyer, Devers agreed to settle the case before trial. Under the terms of the settlement, his money covered Mr. Mayer's fees and paid me $50,000. After the meeting ended, I thanked Mr. Mayers for his help and, trying to be funny, said, "Looks like I lost my wife, but I got $25,000. Under the circumstances, it's probably a fair deal." However, I found that I couldn't laugh at my own joke. On the way to the car, I thought about Lisa. By now, she must have learned the truth about Devers. In the end, I sent her copies of statements from two women who were willing to testify against him. I felt sorry for her, but she brought all this on herself. I wondered if she would try to call me, or if she would be so ashamed of her behavior that she would not dare to do so. I hoped that she would call after all, although I did not know what I would do next. I decided that if I didn't hear from her in a few weeks, I would call myself and ask how she was doing. 3 weeks passed, and Lisa called, asking to meet for a drink. For a moment, I wanted to say that I wasn't ready to talk to her yet, but that would be a lie. We agreed to meet the next evening. I picked up Lisa at her apartment, and we went to a quiet bar where we used to hang out when we wanted to talk. It was awkward at first. We discussed the weather much more banal. Finally, Lisa said, "I'm so sorry about all of this. I can't believe I was so stupid. How could I trust this scammer? I'm terribly ashamed of everything that happened. I didn't want to hurt you, but I was so confused that I didn't know what I was doing. Do you think you can ever forgive me?" This is the main question, perhaps the most important question of my life, and I had no answer to it. I just said, "Perhaps, we'll see." Realizing that it was difficult for me to talk about this topic, I changed the topic by asking how things were going at her work. Lisa seemed relieved by the change of topic, and soon we were chatting like we once did every night after work. When I dropped Lisa off at home, she invited me for a cup of coffee. I knew it would be better for me to leave, but I agreed to come in for a while. Inside, Lisa started talking about how much she regretted ruining our good marriage and hurting me, then started crying. I couldn't resist. I hugged her, held her close, and promised that everything would be fine. While I held and comforted her, I kissed her on the cheek. Then again, and before I knew it, our lips were locked in a kiss that released all the pent-up tension I had felt since the beginning of the evening. We had sex. When her hug loosened, I decided it was best for me to leave. It was awkward enough that I told her I loved her. Staying overnight would be completely wrong. I can't just forget everything that happened. Lisa wanted me to stay, but I went home anyway. On the way home, I became restless. Isn't that what I wanted? Am I so eager to get back to my old life that I'm ready to just forget what Lisa did to me? I told myself that I needed to slow down, otherwise I might hurt both myself and Lisa again. Our divorce was supposed to become official in a week. Should I stop the process, or should I still finish it? With such thoughts, I hardly slept that night. The next morning, I decided on two things. First of all, I'm not going to rush Lisa. I will not allow the looming date of divorce to dictate my behavior. I intend to move slowly and make informed decisions. Secondly, I will focus on my career to make up for lost time. This will help distract me during this difficult period so that I am not constantly thinking about what Lisa did with Bob. I discussed this with Lisa, and she agreed that we should move slowly. We started dating. I saw her too, sometimes 3 times a week for dinner or a movie, and more often than not we had sex. We have sex more often now than before. The divorce was finalized, and we were both happy with it. Everything was going well. I got a promotion at work, and Lisa accepted the fact that I sometimes had to travel for business. But one evening, Lisa called me and said that she was going on a date with another man. I expressed my displeasure, but Lisa responded, "At the end of the day, we're not married anymore, and I think we both need to date other people to make sure that if we get back together, it's the right decision for both of us." I didn't want her to date other men, but it was clear from her tone that she was going to do it regardless of whether I agreed or not. I asked her if she was going to have sex with him, to which she replied that she didn't know. So Lisa began dating other men. Not often, once or twice a month, but I didn't like it. At least she didn't date the same guy more than once or twice. She refused to tell me if she had sex on her dates, saying it was none of my business. I tried to get her to stop, but she just said, "If you want to be with me, you'll have to wait until I'm ready for monogamy." Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore and had to find out if she was having sex with the men she was dating. I assumed yes, but I needed to be sure. One evening, when I knew that Lisa had a date, I parked near her apartment as soon as she returned from work and waited for her boyfriend to show up. At 8 o'clock, a car drove up to Lisa's apartment. A man about 40 years old, about 70 meters tall, weighing about 70 kilograms came out of it. Before he could get to the door, Lisa herself came out and met him halfway to the car. She kissed him, and they headed to the car together. Her companion opened the door for her, and Lisa sat inside. Then he walked around the car and got behind the wheel. When they drove off, I followed them. They arrived at a Mexican restaurant in a shopping center and went inside. I went to a nearby pizzeria, got a small pizza and 2 glasses of cola to go, and ate the pizza in the car while I waited for Lisa and her boyfriend to finish dinner. About 45 minutes later, they left the restaurant and headed towards his house. The house was outside the city, in an area where houses are on large, tree-filled lots. This allowed me to get closer to the house when Lisa and her companion went inside. I crept up to the window, from where I could see them standing in the living room and kissing. What I saw made me feel both angry and excited at the same time. While I was watching, I kept thinking, why doesn't she stop him? Why allow him to do this? I wanted to knock on the door and stop what was happening, but I knew that if I did, I would ruin any chance of restoring my relationship with Lisa. Why is she acting this way? What has changed in her during this time? And what has changed in me if I stand here and watch instead of doing something? How can I still love this woman? At that moment, I realized I couldn't take it anymore. I quickly returned to my car and drove home. The next day, when I spoke to Lisa, I didn't tell her anything. I was angry, but most of all at myself for allowing this to happen. So what if I love her? After all, I really love her. Everything continued like this for about 6 months. At this time, my boss informed me that I was going to Atlanta for a month-long course to obtain my technician certification. I heard that the course was difficult, but I was confident that I was ready. Besides, it seemed to me that a short distance from Lisa would do me good. That evening, Lisa and I had dinner, and I told her about the upcoming course. She was silent for a few minutes and then said, "This is not a good time. I just decided that it was time to stop dating other men and make our relationship exclusive again. Apparently, this will have to be postponed until you return." What does it mean? Ultimatum. If I don't go to the course, she will stop seeing other men now, and if I go, she will continue to see them until I return, and then what? I was angry, but I didn't show it. "I'll still go to the course, and you do as you see fit," I said. Her facial expression was amazing. Apparently, she didn't expect me to answer her like that. The next night, Lisa went on a date again and continued to date other men until I left, even the night before I left. She came to me in the morning when I was getting ready to leave for Atlanta. I was annoyed that she spent the evening on a date rather than with me, so I wasn't particularly nice to her. As I grabbed my bags and walked to the door, I kissed Lisa on the cheek and said, "See you in a month." Lisa asked, "Is that all you want to tell me?" "What else can I say? I'm not happy with the way things are now. We'll talk about this when I get back. Maybe I'll start dating other people too." It seems that my words hurt Lisa. Her eyes sparkled, and she said, "Well, maybe you should do that," and walked out of the apartment. Later, while sitting on a plane on the way to Atlanta, I decided that I should really try dating other women. Nothing serious, just fun and sex. I saw the list of course participants and knew that there would be 10 women among them. I decided to do everything possible to spend the night with at least one of them. On Monday morning, the first day of class, I walked up to the classroom and looked around. Among the 10 women in the class, 3 were in their 50s, another 3 were severely overweight, and 2 of the remaining were in their 20s and wore wedding rings. There were 2 women left, about 30 pretty. One of them was blonde, about 65 meters, with large breasts and beautiful blue eyes. The other is a brunette, about 75 meters tall, with small but neat breasts and dark brown eyes. When they sat down, there was one empty seat between them, which I immediately took. The first thing the instructor did was ask everyone to introduce themselves. In the process, I learned that the blonde's name was Katie and the brunette's name was Carla. Whenever I had the opportunity, I would try to talk to Katie or Carla. Katie was very friendly and seemed like a good candidate for my plan to seduce someone on this course. Carla, on the other hand, showed almost no interest in me. She answered my questions in monosyllabic phrases and was clearly irritated by my very presence. After all presentations were completed, the instructor explained the course outline. It consisted of 3 parts, each of which included lectures and a team project. At the end of each unit, we had to present a team project for class discussion and then take a 150-question test. To receive a certificate, you had to pass all 3 tests, scoring at least 80% on each. That is, you had to answer at least 120 out of 150 questions correctly. The instructor then divided us into 5 teams of 5, and I was lucky enough to have both Katie and Carla on my team. The first part of the course lasted 1.5 weeks. We spent half the day in lectures, and the rest of the day, and sometimes in the evening, working on the project. Whenever I got the chance, I continued to work with both girls. Katie because she seemed more approachable, and Carla because I either wanted to win her over or understand why she was so cold to me. On the first Friday of the course, classmates gathered at the hotel bar for a drink. When it got late, most began to go to their rooms. By 11 o'clock, it was just me, Katie, and Carla. For a brief moment, a fantasy of a threesome flashed through my head, but Carla immediately brought me back to reality. She stood up and announced that she was going to her room to read, and as if jokingly she added, "Katie, be careful with this guy. I think he wants to get into bed with you." This instantly knocked me off my feet. I didn't even have the words to answer. I tried to laugh it off, but it hardly seemed sincere. After Carla left, Katie looked at me and said, "Actually, I was hoping you would want to get into bed with me. If I go one more night without sex, I'll just go crazy." We finished our drinks, and I followed Katie to her room. The closer we got, the more nervous I became. I hadn't had sex with anyone other than Lisa in over 9 years, and I wasn't really sure where to start. We had sex, but in the process, she got a call and she answered. I couldn't believe my ears. Katie just told her boyfriend husband that she was having sex with me and said she would call him back and tell him all about it. I think she knew what I was thinking. She said, "It was my husband. I'll have to call him back later." She had an innocent face. She clearly didn't feel any guilt about cheating on her husband. I asked, "Doesn't it upset him when he finds out you're having sex with another man?" Katie replied, "No, not until he finds out and I tell him all the details. I love my husband, but I like to have sex with other men, and he likes it when I tell him about it." Is he fooling around too? No, he's happy to just share with me. It works for both of us. Is this a problem for you? I said, "No, it's not a problem. It's just something new for me." I rolled over onto my back and began to think about what it would be like to listen to your wife describe her sexual adventures with other men. After her almost unceremonious farewell, I got dressed and returned to my room. I spent the next hour thinking about what had happened. Sex with Katie was wonderful, but I was embarrassed by the idea of her telling her husband about her affairs with other men. This concept was new to me. A little later, I thought about calling Lisa, but for some reason I didn't want to talk to her. Was it guilt or something else? If it was guilt, I wasn't aware of it on a conscious level, so it must have been something else. On Saturday morning, I decided that I no longer wanted to date Katie, but I didn't know how to get out of this situation without creating tension in class. As I left her on Friday night, Katie said, "See you tomorrow." Did this mean she was looking forward to our next meeting, and how much time did she expect to spend with me? My head was spinning. How can I get out of this? I got dressed and left the hotel early in the morning, going for a walk around Atlanta. I went to the Underground Mall, walked around the shops, and ate lunch at Hooters. The food there is not the best, but the views are pleasing to the eye. By the time I got back to the hotel, it was already 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I went up to the room and called Lisa. She responded by saying, "Oh, so you finally decided to call me. You've been away for a week, and this is your first time calling. Are you angry with me?" I replied, "No, I'm not angry with you. It's just been a busy week. We stayed up late studying and working on our class projects, and when I got back to the room, I didn't have the energy to call you, only to find out that you weren't home. Therefore, in order not to think about the fact that you are somewhere with another man, I don't call. Don't be jealous. You know I love you. You know, that's the problem. I believe you love me, but it doesn't help when I know you're in bed with another man. Let's not quarrel. Who's fighting? I'm just telling you how I feel. Okay then, let's change the subject. How are classes going? Have you passed your certificate exam yet? I said, "No. There will be 3 exams, and we will take the first one on Wednesday." After that, the conversation became quite normal. Lisa was talking about work, I told her about my walk at the mall, and she mentioned a movie she went to see on Friday night. I didn't ask who she went to the movies with, and she didn't say it herself. At the end of the conversation, Lisa asked when I would call again. I said I would call after I got the results of the first test on Thursday evening. Then I told her I loved her and said goodbye. At 7 o'clock, I decided to go down to the bar and have a drink before having dinner in the hotel restaurant. When I walked into the bar, the first person I saw was Katie. She was leaving the ladies' room and almost ran into me. There was no longer any possibility of avoiding the meeting. Katie smiled widely, took my arm and said, "David, where have you been all day?" My first thought was that I would be in trouble, but I didn't know what kind of trouble or how to get out of it. I replied, "I couldn't sit still, so I went sightseeing." "Let's go to the table, have a drink, and you can tell us what you saw." Katie took my arm and led me to a table at the end of the bar. Carla and another of our classmates, Bill, were sitting there. I thought, great, Katie is setting up a double date for us. What's worse than going on a date with a woman you don't want to be with and another woman who doesn't love you? It certainly didn't promise to be a fun evening. As we approached the table, Katie quickly sat down in the chair next to Bill, put her arm around his arm and said, Bill and I are going to dinner at an Italian restaurant nearby. Would you like to come with us? Carla and I looked at each other and simultaneously started making up excuses why we couldn't go with Kathy and Bill. Katie didn't seem to notice our embarrassment and simply said, "Well, we'll have one more drink and then we'll go. If you change your mind, you can join." I simply smiled at Katie and shook my head slightly, indicating my refusal. Carla didn't say anything. She just sat there, holding her glass on the table with both hands, and looked around the room. I learned this trick. When you have nothing to say to the people you are with, you pretend to be interested in the environment so that there is an excuse not to look at anyone. When the waitress came over, Bill and I ordered beer, and Kathy and Carla ordered wine. While we were waiting for drinks, Katie asked where I had been on the tour. When I said I went to the Underground Mall, Katie said she wanted to go there and asked Carla if she wanted to go there the next day. Carla agreed. Katie then asked what I was doing there, and I said I was just shopping and having lunch. Katie asked where exactly I had lunch. I couldn't help but laugh, knowing what reaction to expect from the girls. I ate at Hooters. Carla said, "Hooters? Well, of course." Bill and Katie started laughing. I said, "What's so funny? I go there for beef Wellington, and by the way, they have a great selection of wines." Bill and Kathy laughed even harder, but Carla just looked at me for a few seconds with an unreadable expression on her face and then turned away. Before she turned away, I noticed that she was trying to hide her smile. Apparently, she also found it funny, but did not want to give me the pleasure of letting me see her smile. Then our drinks arrived, and the conversation turned to classes and the upcoming test. We all agreed to study together, and then the topic changed to cinema, sports, politics, and many other things. During this time, I noticed that Carla only joined in the conversation with everyone when we were discussing class. The rest of the time, she only talked to Katie, barely talked to Bill, and didn't talk to me at all. I wondered why she disliked me so much and decided that it would be my goal to find out the reason. Later, as I was returning from the restroom, I ran into Katie, who was going to the ladies' room. She grabbed my hand, stopped me, and said, "Don't get me wrong. I had a great time with you yesterday, but my husband and I have an agreement not to date anyone more than once in a short period of time. This helps avoid unnecessary attachments. Do you understand what I mean?" I said, "Yes, I completely understand. My feelings are not hurt." In fact, I wanted to say, "Thank God." When Kathy returned, Bill stood up and said that they had better go so they wouldn't have to wait too long for a table. Katie turned to Carla and said, "I'll call you tomorrow about going to the underground," and then turned to me, "See you in class on Monday." As the door closed behind Katie, I wondered how long it would be before Carla, too, made up an excuse and left. When the door closed, I turned to Carla and said, "Alone at last." Carla didn't answer, but I knew she was going to leave, and I suddenly wanted her to stay. I wanted to understand why she dislikes me so much. Does this apply only to me or to all men in general? I knew I couldn't just ask, so I started talking about the class. "How do you think the test will be broken down? What topics from the material covered, in your opinion, will be the main focus?" It was the right question. For the next hour, Carla and I had a very friendly conversation about classes. At some point, I suggested moving to a restaurant, and Carla agreed. As we talked, I began to notice how attractive Carla was. Her big dark eyes could melt any heart. Her arms looked like she was playing sports. All her movements were graceful, and she was not at all shy in communication. She had a pleasant voice, and it seemed to me that if she wanted, she could sing beautifully. Earlier, when we were walking from the bar to the restaurant, I had already noticed her seductive figure. Her buttocks were toned and beautifully rounded, although she was wearing trousers and I could not see her legs, but I was sure that they were in no way inferior to the rest. By the end of dinner, it became clear that we had nothing left to discuss about class, our group project, or the upcoming test. I didn't want Carla to leave, so I decided to ask her the question that was bothering me. "At the risk of embarrassing you a little, I want to ask about something that has been bothering me since the first day we met in class. I clearly get the impression that you don't think highly of me, and I'd like to understand why. Is this a mystery to you? You came to your first lesson, quickly looked around the room, and decided that you would seduce me and Katie. It was so obvious. No sooner had you sat down next to us than you immediately began trying to talk to whichever of us answered. You were already flirting with us during the class introduction. I was just trying to make friends. If I have to stay here for a month, I want to have friends. When a married man chooses two women in a class who are no more than 50, no under 25, and no more than 200 pounds to be friends with, he is obviously on the lookout. Most men first make friends with other men in the group. I said, I'm not married. No? Then why are you wearing a wedding ring? I looked at my left hand and saw my wedding ring. I was a little taken aback to realize that I never took the ring off after the divorce was finalized. I didn't know I was still wearing the ring. I didn't know what to say about this. I'm divorced. Divorced for about 6 months. I looked at the ring and said, I guess some old habits die hard. Divorced, right? Is the ring part of your game, or is it some kind of Freudian idea? For example, maybe you subconsciously want your wife back. Part of my game? Freudian? What did she mean? Then it occurred to me that maybe there was something worthwhile in the idea that I was wearing the ring because I wanted Lisa back. In the end, I really wanted Lisa back. I said, I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's Freudian. Why did your wife leave you? Did she find out that you were cheating on her? Did you insult me? I don't know why, but I ended up telling Carla the whole story of what happened to Lisa. How she ran off with Devers, how Devers turned out to be a fraud, and everything else. I even admitted that I had my sights set on Katie and her as the women I wanted to have an affair with. I guess I thought that when Carla found out everything, she would be a little more sympathetic to me. Oh, you poor child. Your wife ran off with another guy. So what now? I should sleep with you because I feel sorry for you, or because you are such a hot lover. Oh, wait, your wife left you for another man. I guess that means you're not such a hot lover. Well, I don't care about sympathy. She couldn't have hit me any harder if she had used a baseball bat. I said, what gives you the right to talk to me like that? What have I ever done to you? I qualified on the first day of class when you started having sexual fantasies about me. Tell me something you were thinking about when I introduced myself to class on Monday morning. It doesn't matter whether you tell me the truth or not because you know the truth and you know I'm right about you. I said, okay, do you want to know what I was thinking? I decided to tell her exactly what I was thinking as I watched her introduce herself. When I watched you talk about yourself, I imagined how good it would be to have sex with you. I hoped my answer would shock her, but it didn't. She replied, I hope you have a good imagination because this fantasy will never become reality. I asked, do you hate all men that much or just me? So what now? Do you think I'm gay because only I can resist your masculine charm? I said, that's not what I was thinking about, but maybe that's the answer. You're jealous because I slept with Katie last night and you wanted to be her instead. Carla looked at me and said, you really are full of crap. Then she got up and left. After Carla left, I sat there for a minute, trying to figure out what happened. I felt like I was in a fight and lost badly. Not only did I lose, but I don't know if I even landed any punches. My curiosity as to why Carla didn't like me turned into hatred for her. I wanted to take revenge for the nasty things she said to me. I was determined to find a way to get to her and upset her as much as she upset me. I returned to my room, thought about calling Lisa, but decided not to and went to bed. On Monday, Carla was no more friendly or hostile than she had been since the first day of class. She talked to me about work, but nothing else. I noticed one thing that day. That morning during the lecture portion of class, every time I answered a question or made a comment in class, I could see that it was bothering Carla. She rarely spoke in class. I wondered if she was having trouble doing well in class. That evening, when everyone came to the bar for drinks, I noticed that Katie was with another male student. I wondered if her plan was to get all male students. I had to laugh to myself when I thought that Katie had better slow down. Since there are only 15 men in the class, Katie would get them all at that rate and still have 2 more weeks of classes left. I didn't quite understand why this happened. Perhaps I wanted it myself. But when the other students left for dinner, I was again left alone with Carla. She looked at me and said, "Oh great, do I have to sit with you again?" I decided not to exchange barbs with her, but one thought still came to mind, and I decided to hit her with it one last time before leaving. "You know, I'm still not sure what sexuality you are, but I think I understand why you don't like me. I'm smarter than you, and it's driving you crazy. You're angry because all this comes easy to me, but you have to work hard, and still you don't have time." Her expression was priceless. Being smarter than her may not have been the real reason for her dislike, but my words definitely angered her. Carla's face turned red, and when she spoke, I could hear the rage in her voice. "Smarter than me? You're not even close to my level. I was smarter than you 10 years ago." I just laughed and said, "Great answer." Then she snapped back, "Well, if you think you're smarter than me, how about a little bit?" "What bet?" "To see which of us gets the best score on Wednesday's test." I said, "It's coming. How long?" "Oh, let's not use the money. Let's say if I win, I'll force you to do something that you definitely don't want, and if you win, you'll force me to do something that I definitely don't want." I liked it. I wanted to find a way to humiliate her. This was exactly what I wanted. "Okay, what's on your mind?" "Nothing yet. Let's think about it tonight. You write down what I should do if I lose, and I'll write down what you will do if you lose. We'll meet tomorrow and exchange notes. Oh, and this should stay just between us. No one else should know about our bet. Agree?" "Agree." That evening, back in my room, I sat and tried to figure out what I could force Carla to do that would be humiliating for her. It was impossible to involve others in the bet, and this made the task more difficult. But then an idea came to me, and I wrote it down. The next evening after dinner, we met Carla at the bar. I couldn't wait to see her reaction when she found out what I was up to. Even if she refused the bet, I would at least get a little satisfaction from getting her to back down. When we sat down, Carla placed 2 envelopes on the table. I asked what they were for, and Carla said, "You put your bid in one envelope, and I'll put mine in another, then we'll seal them." While I watched, Carla slipped the paper into her envelope, licked the edge, and sealed it. Then we both dribbled candle wax onto our envelopes. I pressed my thumb against the wax on my envelope, and Carla did the same. Carla took my envelope and handed me hers, saying, "The envelopes must remain sealed until we receive the test results, otherwise the bet is off." "Agree?" I nodded. "Meet me here on Thursday evening with the test results. Then the loser will open his envelope and have to do what the winner wrote. Do you understand all this, or should I explain it again?" On Wednesday after the test, I felt pretty confident. I was confident that I had not only passed the test, but that I had gotten a good score, and was confident that I had beaten Carla. I finished the test before she did, and as I walked past her, I noticed that she was clearly having a hard time with the test. Returning to the room, I called Lisa. I told Lisa about the test and said that I felt like I did very well. She replied that she was happy for me. Lisa then said she had news for me. "I think I'm ready to make our relationship exclusive. No more dating other men. I want us to be only with each other. We'll discuss this more when you get home." This was good news, but it didn't have the impact I expected. I told her that was great news and that I couldn't wait to get home and make love to her. We talked a little more and then said goodbye. I turned off the light and went to bed, thinking about how Carla would react when she opened the envelope and saw what she had to do. I wasn't going to make her pay. Even if I made her beg to leave, I would get satisfaction. At the end of the school day on Thursday, the teacher handed out computer printouts of our test results. I scored 137 out of 150. It was even better than I thought. I was very pleased with myself. Carla and I met at a bar at 6 o'clock to settle a dispute. She spoke first. Well, how bad did you do? I handed her the printed protocol. Carla studied this for a while. I saw her tense up. Then she threw the paper on the table and said, "Crap, you won." I wanted to ask her what her score was, but I liked the look of pain on her face, so I didn't say anything. When the waitress arrived, I ordered a beer and Carla ordered a double martini. She then turned to me and asked, "Do you mind if we wait until we get the drinks before opening the envelope?" "Everything is fine. I can wait." Outwardly, I was calm, but inside I couldn't wait for her to open the envelope. When the drinks arrived, Carla said, "Show me your envelope first. I want to make sure you haven't opened it." I showed her the sealed envelope. She then reached into her purse and pulled out the envelope I had given her. Without looking at me, she tore the envelope and pulled out the enclosed piece of paper. Carla unfolded the newspaper and read it. I watched her face, expecting a strong reaction, but all I got was a quick glance in my direction, and she said, "Is this all sex? Well, that's understandable." No arguments, no whining, just, "Well, that's understandable." I couldn't believe it didn't cause an even bigger reaction from her. After a moment, Carla asked, "When do you want to pick up?" "Tonight?" "Right now?" I said, "No, after dinner." Carla said, "Look, this piece of paper says sex. It doesn't say anything about dinner or drinks or kissing or anything else. Call me when you're ready and I'll come to your room. And now, the less you talk to me, the better." I said, "Okay," and sat quietly and drank beer. When I finished my beer, Carla was still sipping her martini. I stood up and said that I would go eat. "I'll call you around 8:30. Carla didn't say anything when I left. I was a little disappointed by her reaction, but I figured she was keeping her emotions in check because she didn't want to give me the satisfaction of a strong reaction. When I returned to my room after dinner, I showered and dressed in a bathrobe and a pair of jockey shorts. Then I called Carla and told her I was ready. Her response was a simple "okay." 5 minutes later, Carla was at the door. She was wearing baggy jeans and a sweatshirt. I said, "You didn't have to dress up like that for me." Carla didn't answer. She put her purse on the dresser, went to the bathroom, and returned with 2 hand towels. She did it. Coming out of the bathroom, she said, "I want a chance to get revenge. Same deal for the next test." I said, "Of course." Carla said, "I'll meet you tomorrow night at the bar to exchange bets." Then she left. For the next week and a half before the second test, everything was almost the same as before the first test. Carla didn't like me anymore. Katie was still passing the men in class, and after the students gathered at the bar, Carla and I somehow ended up alone. Also during this period, Lisa talked more about how she would like to start an exclusive relationship with me when I returned home. I didn't ask her, but I assumed that meant she would continue seeing other men until I returned home. Finally, the second test was history, and I scored 139 out of 150, even better than the first test. That night, I met Carla again at the bar. Once again, Carla had to admit defeat. When Carla opened the envelope, she looked at me with disgust and said, "Again, could you come up with something more original?" I just smiled at her and said, "I'll call you when I'm ready." Then I got up and left the bar. I called Carla at 8 o'clock, and about 10 minutes later, she showed up at my door. The order was the same. Then she said, "Are we going for the last test?" I smiled at Carla and said, "Yes, we have one last test." After Carla left, I decided to change my bet for the final test. I took a piece of hotel stationery and wrote, "Carla, since you just lost for the third time in a row, I think I should get a better prize. Tonight you will go out to dinner with me, after which we will return to your room where you will do a dance for me. We'll end the evening by having sex. I hope you like it." When I finished writing the note, I folded it and sealed it in a hotel envelope. The last week of classes went by very quickly. There was a lot of work and many nights of studying. The last test was to take place on Wednesday, Then we would spend Thursday and Friday presenting our latest team projects. This last test was the hardest of all, but I felt like I had done well again and was looking forward to receiving my reward from Carla. At the end of the school day on Thursday, we received our test results. I again got 138 out of 150. I was very happy. Not only did I get a certificate, but I was also going to have sex with that bitch Carla. Carla didn't come to the bar right after class. I thought she must be upset about her exam result. Perhaps she didn't pass. I tried not to pay attention to it, but I felt sorry for her. She needed to get certified just like I did, so I knew how much it would hurt her if she failed. I decided that if she failed the test, I would not try to claim my prize. I couldn't be that angry. Carla finally showed up at 7 o'clock. She didn't seem upset, which puzzled me. When she sat down, she didn't talk to me until she ordered herself a martini. Then she asked, "How are you?" I threw my protocol in front of her and said, 138. Carla studied my protocol for a moment, then looked at me and said, "That's a good result on this test." Then she handed me her protocol. I couldn't believe my eyes. Carla scored 142 points. She beat me. I suddenly panicked. I kept thinking, she beat me. How could she defeat me? Carla didn't say a word until our drinks arrived. As the waitress put the drinks on the table, Carla reached out, took my beer, handed me a martini and said, "You'll need this more than I will." Then Carla told me to open the envelope. I opened the envelope and read the enclosed note. I had to read it twice to understand its meaning. The note said, "Next, I have planned humiliation for you. Tomorrow evening, I have a date with a man. Before the evening is over, I'm going to have sex with my partner. When I return to my room after the date, I will call you and you will come to my room. You'll get the leftovers. Do you have any questions?" I was disgusted. I said, "Wait a minute. In our original agreement, you said that no one else should participate in our bet." I didn't think it would work, but I had to try. Carla returned with the words, "My date will have nothing to do with the bet. He will never know anything about it, so I guess I'll see you tomorrow night." Carla was all smiles, stood up and left the table. I couldn't help but notice that she was very beautiful when she smiled, but she was still a bitch. When Carla left the bar, I noticed that she hadn't touched her beer, so I drank it and then started drinking a martini. As I sipped my martini, I thought about what Carla had planned for me. At first I was angry. How could she expect me to do this? It was really low. When I finished my martini, I calmed down. Will things really be that much different? It wouldn't kill me. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of trying to back out of the bet. And besides, after this, I will never have to see her again. On Saturday morning, I fly home to renew my relationship with Lisa. After leaving the bar, I walked into the shopping center attached to the hotel to find a place to eat. After a nice steak dinner, I wandered around the mall for a while. Walking past Victoria's Secret, I saw a sexy black bra and panty set in the window and thought I'd go in and buy it for Lisa. I ended up buying a bra, panties, and a pair of black thigh-high stockings. I was walking up to my room when a sudden impulsive idea struck me. I didn't even take a moment to think and decide whether this was a good idea or not. I exited the elevator on the floor below mine and walked down the hallway to Carla's room. When she answered my knock, she looked very surprised to see me. What are you doing here?" I said. "I'd like to talk to you for a minute. Can I come in?" Carla stepped back and held the door for me. I walked in and sat down on one of the two chairs that were in her room. Carla walked over and sat down in another chair. I didn't plan what I would say, so I just started talking and hoped it would come out right. "Carla, I just wanted to apologize for my behavior over the past 4 weeks. I think we started off on the wrong foot, and I think it's my fault." Carla said, "I hope you're not just saying this to try to get out of paying our bet." I said, "No, I'm not trying to get away from anything. I have every intention of paying off my debt. I just hope that in the future, if you ever think about me, you will remember me for who I am right now, and not for all the nasty things I said to you." Then I handed her a Victoria's Secret bag. Carla looked at the bag and asked, "What is this?" I said, "This is a peace proposal." Carla reached into her bag and pulled out panties and stockings. "Why are you giving me underwear? What are you up to?" I could hear the suspicion growing in her voice. I said, "I'm just as surprised that I did it. I was walking around the mall and saw these at Victoria's Secret and thought they would be perfect for your date tomorrow night. I thought it was something new and sexy, that the clothes could help you enjoy your evening more. I don't usually buy women's underwear, but I think our circumstances are unique. I hope you can accept this gift as it was intended. There is no hidden message in this, just a peace proposal." Carla said, "I don't know what to say. Everything is fine. I'll leave now and wait for your call tomorrow evening. Enjoy your date." When I left, Carla didn't get up. She just sat and looked at the gift I gave her. When I left the room, I really felt good. I guess I just didn't want to feel like the bad guy in all of this. If Carla hadn't found a way to say thank you or I'm sorry too, I would have understood. At least then I could still think of her as Carla the bitch. All day Friday, Carla stayed as far away from me as possible. I kept sneaking glances in her direction, but I never noticed her looking at me. I continued to look around the room, trying to figure out who Carla was seeing that night, but I couldn't find anything that would give it away. After class, I thought about sitting in the lobby and waiting for Carla to arrive to find out who she was dating, but decided against it and went to my room to call Lisa. When I called Lisa, she said she was glad I called. She had something she wanted to discuss with me. This made me a little nervous because I had no idea what to expect. Lisa said, "Remember when I said I was ready to stop dating other men right now? Well, next Friday will be my last date." Last date? Next Friday? What the hell is she talking about? I said, "Lisa, what do you mean?" "George, the guy I was dating while you were gone, asked me if we could get together one last time next Friday. Here's the thing. George would like you to join us. He wants to have a threesome. He said it would be a sort of ceremonial end to my relationship with him and the beginning of my return to you." I felt a knot in my stomach, but I didn't want to say anything to start a fight, so I just said, "So what did you say?" I told him that I thought it was a good idea, but I would have to discuss it with you. If you really don't want to do this, you don't have to come with us. I said, "Does that mean you'll go with him whether I go or not?" "Well, yes, this is the last time. After that, I'm all yours as long as you want me." I was in too much of an emotional knot to talk about it anymore, so I just said, "Can we wait and talk about this when I get home tomorrow?" Then I changed the subject. At 12:30, I was watching a movie on HBO when the phone rang. It was Carla. "It's me. Now I'm ready for you." Then she hung up. I went into the bathroom and looked at my reflection in the mirror for a minute. I'm not sure what I was looking for. I guess I was hoping that the guy looking at me knew the answers to all my questions. But he looked as stupid as I did. All I could do was say, "What a pathetic asshole you are." Then I left. It only took me a few minutes to get to Carla's room. When I knocked on the door, I wondered what I would say to Carla, but when she opened the door, it was obvious from the look on her face that I wasn't expected to say anything. Carla turned and walked back to her room, and I decided I should follow her, so I did. The first impression that struck me was that she looked sexy. Carla's shoulder-length dark hair was styled in a French braid, revealing her elegantly shaped neck. She wore a black cocktail dress with spaghetti straps that showed off her smooth, beautifully toned arms and shoulders. The front of the dress was cut low enough to show just enough cleavage to subtly suggest that she had very nice breasts without exposing them. The hem of the dress ended mid-thigh, highlighting Carla's long, sexy legs covered in sexy black stockings. I was sure that these were the same stockings that I had given her the night before. I suddenly felt aroused by the thought that I was going to look at the treasures hidden under her dress. I kept my promise. This morning, as I was getting ready to go home, I reviewed the events of the past few weeks. I wasn't sure how I felt about everything, but I was sure that the events of last night had left me confused. I didn't know if I should enjoy the experience or be completely humiliated. At that moment, I felt both. When I went down to the lobby to place my order, I met John, who was the lead instructor for our class. I went over to tell him I enjoyed the course and thank him for his help. John said, "I'm glad you liked it. You did well." I said, "Well, I was a little worried. Getting this certification was important." "Were you worried? You scored second on all 3 tests. I thought it must have been easy for you." Did I score second on all 3 tests? This meant that Carla must have received the highest score on the last test. Can I ask who has the highest test scores? Certainly. Carla's scores were 140, 140, and 142. She was the highest all 3 times. It stunned me. Why did she lie and say that I beat her in the first 2 tests? It didn't make sense. She's been up to something this whole time, and whatever it is, she won. Almost without realizing it, I said, "She's smart." John said, "Oh yes, she's very smart, but a little weird." I asked him what he meant, and he replied, "The second week of class, I asked Carla to go out to dinner with me. She said she couldn't because she really needed to focus on her studies, but then she said she would come with me after the last lesson. So we agreed on a date. Anyway, I met her here at the hotel last night, and she looked really sexy, so I invited her to dinner. After, it was still quite early when Carla started acting like she was interested in having sex with me. I invite her to my home, but she says that she would prefer to return here to the hotel. So we come back here and go up. Her room, I start kissing her, and she kisses back, but without any enthusiasm. I have sex with her, and then she says, "I have an early flight in the morning. Do you mind if I ask you to leave now?" At that moment, I saw no point in staying, so I went home. When I woke up this morning, I tried to understand what happened. I thought I must have done something wrong. After all, how could someone who was so hot during sex be so cold in bed? So I decided to go see her and talk to her before she left. I called her and asked her to have a cup of coffee with me before she left. Anyway, to get to the point, I asked her if anything was wrong last night, and she said, "No, it was great. I really needed this after 4 hard weeks of classes." Can you believe it? That was great. If she thought it was great, then she definitely screwed up. I just shook my head. Then John said, "Well, I have to go. I enjoyed seeing you in class and good luck in your career." We shook hands, and then John left me with my confused thoughts. Carla, bitch. I winced when I realized that I had said it out loud, but apparently no one had heard me. What the hell is going on? Carla lied to me about her test results, resulting in her owing me. Twice. It was obvious she didn't like it, so why did she do it? Then the big story about the hot sex she had on the date. This was all a lie too. If her plan all along was to humiliate me, she succeeded. I thought I would never know what it all meant. I grabbed my bags and went to the hotel counter to check out. After I returned my rental car and took the Hertz shuttle to the terminal, I saw Carla sitting alone in the back seat of the bus. I placed my bags on the counter and came back and sat next to her. She didn't look at me, so I just whispered, "It was some damn game you played on me. I just found out that you lied to me about your test results and made up most of your story about your date with John last night. He told me everything about your date. So now I have all the facts, but I don't have the truth, and since I can't trust you to tell the truth, I'm not even going to ask you to give me an explanation. I just wanted to let you know that whatever game you played, you won. From the very first moment we met, you tried to humiliate me, and in the end you succeeded." Having finished the conversation, I did not wait for an answer. I stood up and moved to the front of the bus. The first bus stop at the terminal was in the direction of Delta, and that's where I got off. As I collected my bags and headed for the door, I wanted to look back at Carla, but I suppressed the urge. For me, it would just be another defeat. As soon as I got home, I put Carla out of my mind and started concentrating on Lisa. I was excited about the fact that Lisa and I were back together, but I still didn't know what to do about this threesome. According to Lisa, she wanted me to take part as a goodbye to the guy she was dating. I decided I had four options. First of all, I could go for a threesome. I might even like it. Second, I could tell Lisa that I couldn't have a threesome and let her go on the last date without me. Third, I could tell Lisa I want to cancel her last date or we're screwed. And finally, I could have just broken up with her because it was all too humiliating for me. This last thought struck me. Ever since Lisa left me, I've been letting her humiliate me. This may not be intentional. It can happen because I allow it to happen. Perhaps this is the whole problem. Maybe no one is trying to put me down, I'm just bringing it on myself. Perhaps in some ways I succeed in this. The more I thought about it, the more I believed it. After all, why would I put up with Lisa dating other men all these months if I wasn't somehow getting something out of it? They need to be humiliated. I didn't like the idea, but I had no choice. I'll have to accept my weakness. Now I am depressed. Lisa was there to carry out my plan when it landed. She greeted me with a big hug and kisses. After I got my bags, we went to my apartment. Over the next few days, Lisa was very attentive to me. She came to my house and cooked me dinner 4 nights in a row. She also told me that she won't go on any dates until the last one on Friday. Despite Lisa's wonderful treatment of me and the prospect that after Friday there would be no other men in Lisa's life, I was not happy. I was in a constant state of depression. All week Lisa asked about Friday. Was I going to participate? I couldn't answer her. I believed that my inability to deal with this was the cause of my depression, so I finally called Lisa at work on Thursday and told her that I would not be engaging in any sex on Friday night. Lisa sounded disappointed, but she said she understood. When I woke up Friday morning, I felt too depressed to even go to work, so I called in sick. I kept telling myself that this was the end. After tonight, Lisa will be all mine, but no matter how many times I said it and how many times I thought about it, I didn't feel any better. After a while, it dawned on me that what I was feeling was not depression because of Lisa's date, but disappointment because of my own weakness. I should never have let it get this far. I had to put an end to this whole mess. I plucked up my courage and called Lisa. When she recognized my voice, she said hopefully, "Have you changed your mind about tonight?" I said, "Yes, I did it. I have decided that you should not date or have sex with George or anyone else but me. I want you to call George and tell him you'll never see him again. When you leave work, I want you to come to my house and promise me that you will never date anyone again. Otherwise, we will be finished." She said, "You can't call me at the last minute and ask me to cancel something that's been planned for over a week. It's unfair to me." "It's not fair to you. You've been holding my hand for over 6 months now, having sex with whoever you want, and I have to wait. It's not fair. It was very hard for me, and I was tired of it. I get humiliated all the time. I want you here tonight, or it's over." I didn't wait for her answer, but simply hung up. She didn't call me back. I thought that if she came, she would be there by 6:30. At 7:15, I was sitting on the couch drinking a beer, thinking I had lost Lisa because of my ultimatum. I think it was at that moment that I realized that I was putting up with all of Lisa's nonsense, not because I wanted to be humiliated, but because I was afraid of being alone. At 7:25, I heard a car pull up in front of the apartment. I felt my heart jump. I began to feel relief. The only thing I was worried about was that Lisa might show up with that guy George. Then it would be just like the day I came home and found Lisa waiting for me with that piece of shit Devers. When the doorbell did not ring immediately, I began to think that perhaps it was a guest heading to my neighbor's apartment. I wanted to look out the window and watch, but I remained lying on the sofa. If it were Lisa, I wouldn't let her see me looking out the window. Finally, the bell rang. I walked up to the door and looked through the peephole, expecting to see Lisa, but it wasn't Lisa. Instead, a tall woman stood there with her back to the door. She had dark hair and looked well dressed. I assumed she came here to sell me something. I was very disappointed that it wasn't Lisa, and I certainly wasn't in the mood for any sales pitches. When I opened the door, the woman turned around. In the depressed state I was in, I didn't realize who she was until she spoke. She said, "I know you never expected to see me again, but—" My mouth must have dropped open when I realized it was Carla. I had to take another look to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. All I could say was, "Carla, what the hell?" Carla's expression was one of sadness. She asked, "Can I come in? I need to talk to you." I said, "Of course," and stepped aside to let her in. We went into the living room. I invited her to sit and offered her a drink. She looked at the bottle of beer sitting on my coffee table and said she would have a beer if I had one, so I went into the kitchen to get a couple of beers. While I was in the kitchen, I was trying to figure out how I felt when Carla showed up at my door. I couldn't seem to register any recognizable emotion, so I said to myself, "Screw this," and took the beer back to the living room. Carla was sitting on the couch, so I handed her a beer, sat down in one of the chairs facing the couch and said, "So what brings you to Charlotte? Are you here on business or for pleasure? Business or pleasure?" As soon as I said it, I thought it really sounded stupid. Carla didn't seem to care. She sat down with a bottle of beer in her hand and said, "It's beside the point, and it's definitely unpleasant. I came here to talk to you." "Do you mean that this trip isn't fun because you need to talk to me, or that the thing you need to talk to me about isn't fun?" Carla said, "One last thing. I need to talk to you about what happened in Atlanta." I started to get a little angry. Why the hell did she think she came to me to remind me of something I wanted to forget? I said, "I thought we had already said everything that needed to be said on this topic." "Well, you might think so because you had the last word." "Shit, I'm angry at you, but I shouldn't do this. I came to you to explain my behavior and to ask you to forgive me if you can. If you're going to talk about why you did what you did and be honest about it, I'm listening." Carla said, "That's my intention. All week I thought about how I behaved in Atlanta. I guess I kind of knew what I was doing was wrong, but I didn't really care until you told me off on Hertz. Since then, I've been trying to come to terms with why I did it, and now I think I understand, and I need you to understand that too." "Okay, I'll keep an open mind. You talk, I listen." I still wasn't sure if I wanted to hear what she had to say, but part of me was still a gentleman, so I suppressed my disgust at her and sat down to listen to her story. Carla began, "I need to explain how I got to this point, so I need to tell you about my marriage." I thought, "Is she married?" Carla said, "I met Roger at college and instantly fell in love with him. I thought the world revolved around him, so I did everything I could to please him. The problem started in the second year of our marriage. Roger began to stop occasionally for drinks with friends after work. This wasn't a problem at first, but it soon became a problem. He was coming home late 2 or 3 times a week. Many times when he came home, he was drunk and wanted sex. I tried to avoid sex with him, so one night he told me that if I didn't take care of him, he would go find someone who would. I still loved him, so I started giving him what he wanted, hoping that he was just going through a phase and that things would work out. Well, things haven't gotten any better. A couple of times I noticed the smell of perfume on his clothes. Then one night he came home around midnight and I saw lipstick smeared all over his face. Needless to say, I was upset. But I didn't say anything. Roger then gets into bed and wants me to take care of him. I started screaming at him, accusing him of cheating on me, calling him different names. Roger waited until I calmed down a little, then he hit me and said, "Don't ever accuse me of cheating on you. If you ever do this again, you will regret it. Now, if you don't want to get hit again, you better do what I ask." From that moment on, I was broken. His adulterous behavior became more common, and he seemed to enjoy forcing me to have sex with him when he came home. I think he only did it to humiliate me. I stopped worrying about whether Roger was with another woman or not. When he wanted sex, I just did it, getting rid of all emotions. Usually that was all he needed. He just went to bed. "Why didn't you leave him?" At first, I didn't leave because I thought I could turn him back into the man I fell in love with. But after a while, I realized he wasn't going to change. But by then, I was afraid to leave. He convinced me that if I left, I would have nothing and no man would ever want me again. That's why I stayed. Then one night, a little over a year and a half ago, Roger called me and told me on the phone that he was having sex with another woman and that he wanted me to be ready when he got home. When he returned home, I asked my neighbor to call the police if she heard screams from our apartment. I knew that my neighbor didn't like Roger, so I was sure that she would help me. When Roger returned home, I told him I wanted to leave him. He said no words, no warnings, no shouts, no threats. 10 minutes later, the police were at the door. They arrested Roger for assault. Roger was convicted of assault and given a suspended sentence, and I got divorced. I didn't really care that he didn't go to jail. I just wanted him out of my life, and that's what I got. After my divorce, I moved to Chicago and started this job. I felt sorry for her. If what she told me was true, I might understand some aspects of her behavior a little better. As sympathetically as I could, I said, "I'm so sorry, this shouldn't happen to anyone." Carla didn't take my comment into account. She just went back to her story. Intellectually, I know that most men are not like Roger, but emotionally, I felt that all men are exactly like Roger. So this brings us to the first day of our classes. When I met you, I didn't trust you right away. Not because of everything you did, but simply because you were a man. And the more friendly you tried to be, the more I didn't trust you. Then I noticed your wedding ring, and you became Roger. Then you told me about your marriage, and I felt bad. But I wasn't going to let it affect me. I didn't want you to like me, so I kept trying to make you angry so you wouldn't like me, even though part of me wanted you to like me. I said, I think I can understand most of this, but let's move on to betting on 3-unit tests. What was that all about? Carla smiled a little and said, it just happened, and you were all for it. I said, that's right, but I'd be happy to bet $10. The idea of betting came to your mind, and on top of that, you lied about your results in the first 2 tests and said I won. That doesn't make sense to me at all. Carla took a sip of the beer she was still holding in her hand and said, it's hard for me to explain. When the thought of the bet occurred to me, I was angry that you had just assumed that you were smarter than me. I wanted to make you pay for this, but I realized that financially I couldn't afford to bet big enough to hurt you when there was a chance of losing, and I wondered what else we could bet on that wouldn't cost me money. Then an idea struck me. I knew exactly what I wanted as soon as the idea came into my head. You said you knew exactly what you wanted as soon as you came up with the idea, but that night you said you didn't know what you were going to bet on and suggested we think about it overnight. Why don't you just say what you wanted? I needed to make sure you would try to use sex to humiliate me so I wouldn't look so terrible when you saw my bet. You see, you couldn't beat me. After what I've been through in the last 3 years of my marriage, you couldn't do anything sexual to me that could affect me. I didn't want to reveal my bet if I didn't win, so I came up with the idea that only the bet on the winner would be revealed. I had it all figured out until the day we received our first test results. I realized that the only way to know what bet you had was to lose, so I took a chance that I could handle losing. You must have guessed by now that your choice didn't mean much to me. I was also a little curious to see what you'd want the second time around after winning the first round. You see, I wasn't worried about what losing would cost me. I was only worried about the last test. I should have won this fight. I said, I think I kind of understand what you're telling me, but I still don't understand what your final bet was about. To explain this, I need to go back to the time when I was still married. Around the last year of my marriage, I had a fantasy that I would think about at night when Roger was at work. My fantasy was that I would go out and have sex with someone and come home and force Roger to have sex with me. This has always been a strong image in my head. It wasn't a sexual fantasy, it was revenge for all the times Roger humiliated me. The bet allowed me to use you as Roger's surrogate. I hoped that somehow it would help me understand my past. Wow, you did it. Actually, yes. The image in my head was very strong, and then you played your role better than I could have imagined. Until that night, I couldn't think about what I had been through without falling into a deep depression. But now it seems that I was able to close this chapter of my life. Now my problem is to get rid of bad feelings. In fact, Up until that night when I got mine from our bet, I had no feelings for you anyway. I knew that I was using you. But I managed to make you not like me enough that you constantly attacked me, which made it easier for me to ignore what I did to you. But then you came to my room and gave me this sexy lingerie. When you left the room, I started laughing at how stupid you were. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that there is no way for you to know that I set you up, and that I had no affair, only sex. That's when I started feeling bad about myself. It got even worse. When you come to pay your bet. The next morning I felt guilty, but I decided that you would never know what really happened and I would never have to see you again. But you were on the Hertz bus and knew about the exams. You very calmly told me what you thought, and that you did not want to hear any answer from me because you would not be able to believe me. It hurt, and I knew I deserved it, but even if you wanted an answer, I couldn't explain it all in the short time we had. I've been trying to put this behind me all week. I keep thinking that it's all over, but I can't forget about it. So this morning I booked a flight and here I am. I felt a little numb. It was a lot, but I think I understood most of what she said. Finally, I collected my thoughts and said, I think I understand now. I'm not angry anymore. I believe you were driven by forces you couldn't control. Now you have to stop feeling guilty for what you did to me. I hear what you're saying, but I want to make sure that when I leave you won't still be mad at me. So, I'm here so you can do whatever you want. I came here to let you even the score. I didn't know what to do, but suddenly I had an urge. While Carla was talking, I was looking at her legs, and the stockings she was wearing were similar to the ones I bought for her, and I wanted to know for sure, so I told Carla to stand up, which she did. We had sex. We didn't talk for a few minutes, then I stood up and asked Carla if she wanted a drink. She said she would take whatever I had, and I went to the kitchen to get a beer. As I was getting the beer out of the refrigerator, the phone rang. The call was from Lisa. She said, "Can you come to me right now?" I asked, "Why? What's the matter?" "The whole point is that you are not with me. I need you." I said, "I told you this morning that you would have to call George and tell him that you would never see him again, and then you had to come here. You knew that if you met George tonight, everything would be over between us." Lisa said, "I know. I was angry at you for giving me an ultimatum, so I wasn't going to do what you wanted. But the more I thought about things, the more I realized you were right. I knew I had to choose something. I was done with George, so I called him and told him it was tonight, and there would never be a date again. He took it very well. Please come, I'm ready to come back to you now." I said, "Okay, but later." "When?" "I need to do a couple of things, and then I'll come. Maybe in an hour." "Come soon if you can." "Okay, I love you. See you in a little while." When I hung up, I thought, oh crap. What should I do with Carla? When I left the kitchen, Carla was in the living room, dressed. She said, "You have a spare phone there. I heard the entire conversation. Don't worry, I understand. I know you've been trying to get back together with your ex, so go see her. Just think of what happened here as something nice that we shared, and now we can be friends." I tried to say something, but Carla looked at her watch and said she had to go, and walked out the door. I felt a little embarrassed about what had just happened, but it wasn't my fault. I didn't know Carla would show up at my apartment, and I thought when I didn't hear from Lisa, it was over between us. All this happened due to poor timing. I went back to the kitchen to put the 2 bottles of beer I had taken out back into the refrigerator. Then I changed my mind and decided to drink one before getting into the shower. I walked into the living room and sat down on the sofa. I drank my beer, thinking about my evening. I had just had sex with a beautiful but difficult woman and was about to have sex with another beautiful woman. Looking at things this way, I felt that my life would soon become much better. I drank some more beer and thought, so Lisa is ready to come back to me. I hope this time it's forever. I never want to go through the pain and humiliation she put me through over the past few months. I finished my beer and stood up to take the empty beer to the kitchen when I noticed something black out of the corner of my eye. It was Carla's panties. I forgot she left them on the couch, so she goes home without panties. Then I thought, what should I do with this? I can't keep them here. Lisa will find them. I thought about throwing them away, but couldn't bring myself to do it. Then it occurred to me that I could take them to Lisa's apartment and put them in her laundry. She has so many fancy panties that she won't even notice. Then I thought how funny it would be to see Lisa in those panties while we were making love. I stood there a little longer and thought about this idea. I wondered if I should feel guilty for cheating on Lisa on the very night she said she was ready to get back with me. I looked at the panties again, then put them in my pocket and headed towards the door. 25 minutes later, I parked my car in the lot and headed inside. I immediately went to the television monitors showing departing flights and looked to see what the next flight to Chicago would be. The flight was leaving in 45 minutes, so I ran to the gate. I looked back, but didn't see Carla. I didn't think she could have caught any earlier flight. Maybe she couldn't change her ticket and is spending the night. But where? I thought, damn, I've ruined everything. I let her go. As I left, I turned to take one last look at the gate and noticed Carla coming out of the ladies' room. I watched her as she returned to the gate and sat down with her back to me. I walked over and sat down next to her. She didn't even look up to see who had just sat down. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my panties, and said to Carla, "If you're flying back to Chicago tonight, you might need these." Carla seemed startled by the sudden invasion of her privacy. When she turned to me, there was an expression of sadness on her face. But when she recognized me, her face brightened. She then saw the panties and tried to snatch them from my hand before anyone else saw them. But I moved faster and pulled them away. Carla looked a little embarrassed and said, "Give them to me, please. I need them." I said, "I will give them to you on one condition." Carla asked, "Which one?" I said, "I'll give you your panties if you promise to get on that plane and never come near me again." Carla said, "What if I don't promise?" "Well, then you'll just have to come with me now if you ever want your panties back." Carla smiled and said, "So you're holding my panties for ransom? Isn't that illegal?" "Only in some states, not here." "I guess I better do what you say then, because I want my panties back in one piece." I put the panties in my pocket and said, "Okay, if you ever want to see them again, come with me." We both stood up and began to leave the terminal. Carla was silent for a couple of minutes and finally said, "Why? I thought you were going to your ex-wife's apartment to get back together." I thought so, but then I realized that I had just been presented with an important opportunity. I was given a chance to change my life. First, there is Lisa, who was my first love, but who betrayed me and somehow made me feel like it was my fault. Now, finally, after months of pain for me, Lisa has agreed to return to an exclusive relationship. Then you come, treating me like crap, luring me into a weird sexual bet, lying to me about who won, and then subjecting me to a weird sexual encounter designed to help you fix your failing marriage. But then you show up again, say you're sorry, and pretend to believe, and then make love to me. What should I do now? Taking the right step with Lisa and creating a relationship that was probably doomed to fail because of our history together? Or am I pursuing the beautiful Carla, a woman who understandably can't trust men, but has recently opened a small door that could lead to her heart? In the end, the solution was simple. I had your panties. As long as I have them, I can make you do whatever I want. Carla stopped, and I stood next to her. She looked at me with a very serious expression on her face. She then said, "It's not right to make me fall in love with you by holding my panties hostage." Then she kissed me. I suddenly felt happier than I had in a long time. When we got to my car, Carla asked where we were going. I said, "I'm hungry. Let's go get something to eat." Carla spent the rest of the weekend with me, mostly in bed, then returned to Chicago, where she quickly negotiated a transfer to work in Charlotte. We got married 6 months later and are still happily married 7 years later. I've bought Carla a lot of sexy lingerie and lingerie over the years, but I never returned her first pair of panties. I keep this pair in my dresser. They are a kind of touchstone for me. Every time I feel sad, I take them out of the drawer and feel better because the memories they hold come flooding back to me. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.